Yo, 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 what's going on? It's the NRW, where nerds rule the world. It's your boy, Kuya P, aka Patrick Michael Strange. And I'm here with my homie from Level Up Comedy. What's up, Glenn? Glenn Lawrence.
What's going on, Kuya P? Good to see you again. Always a pleasure to talk with you. And I'm so excited to talk with our guest today.
Yes, a returning friend, bro. We miss her so much. We had her on... Was it earlier this year or was it last year? I'm not quite sure, man. Everything goes together because we all met during this pandemic. But the lovely Nicky Endres, we had her on talking about the Asian Americanized comedy special that I believe is now touring everywhere. I think we'll get more details once we bring Nicky on, along with Anna Parsons, who's amazing as well. Yeah, we had them both on to talk about that great comedy special that you should check out once it's out and released and available. It's so good. But yeah, we have Nicky back to talk about all things Nicky Endres and her new show that she has coming on. We're going to get all the details and also walk through her journey a little bit, get some more inside info since it's just her. We're giving her her flowers today. We're going to celebrate everything Nicky Endres. Let's bring her on right now. Let's do it up on the screen. Boom, boom, boom. Air horns going off. Boom, 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 boom. Nicky, what's going on?
Hey, thank you so much for having me back. I just love hanging out with you guys. This will be a good time today.
Yes. And I just realized Glenn and I were going back and forth. If I said, I want to make sure I'm doing the pronouns right. I'm still learning, we're still educating. I said her. I don't know if I should have said they or them.
Of course.
So if I mess up during this, I'm still learning and I'm trying to do my best.
Thank you for saying that. I use both they, them, and she, her. So yeah, you got 2/3 of a chance to be great. I mean, there's more than that, but without getting into Queer 101, we're good. Right. Thank you for saying that, though.
Oh, no worries. I think we're all learning because we're all adapting and changing to the world, and we have to at least try, and that's what I am going to do my best on as well, because it's all about respect and showing love. And yeah, so there you go.
A kinder and more aware world that we're living in.
Yes, and we need to, because of the pandy. It's been a while since we've seen you now in this pandy. What has been going on since our last discussion? We talked a little bit prior to starting up, but anything new before we get to the big highlights, in like your personal life? Everything good? All healed up? Have you been able to travel? Because I think you're all vaxxed up now. Have you been able to do at least a little bit?
Yeah, a little bit. Like, we went to a family wedding, and actually the families that I dog sit for have been going out and seeing their family and catching up and everything. So then I get to spend time with doggies, which I love. I'm very much a dog person.
Oh, I love it.
But I am not a parent. So please let me be an auntie. Let me come help you out, and then they're yours and I can leave.
Well, it's too bad you're not in the DC area, because I just had a kid. I don't know if you saw behind, there's a little spaceship that he flies in right there. You know what I mean? So
congratulations.
Yes, we would take you up on that offer if you were in the DC area.
I also have a doggy too, a big dog who's just amazing as well.
You know what? The dog needs more love now, because we're all focused on the little one. Sometimes the dog is looking at us like, yo, like what? Like, I used to be the one. What's going on now?
When I was adopted, my parents had to get rid of their dog. They had to give him to a neighbor because he was so jealous.
Oh.
This little diva came in and was like, it's all about me now.
Oh.
I'm the alpha. And then he had to go live down the street. But he lived a happy life. He was very well loved. But he just couldn't have all of it at the same time. I could, though. For 2 years. And then my sister came along, and then I had to share.
Womp womp.
I love that. Well, let's throw out some of the flowers before we dig into your background that we wanted to highlight, dig a little bit more into some of your past and successes. But you got a new success. I want to just make sure we get it off the top for people that have already heard a little bit before, and they like, oh, yo, I saw that on Deadline, and we want to know a little bit more. So let's hit them off the top a little bit, maybe, Nicky. Can we?
Yeah, I'd love that. I'm really excited to talk about it. What I'm allowed to, at least.
Let's not get in trouble.
Yeah, it's cool. I don't have pictures or anything for today. The I am working on a limited series for Hulu called The Dropout, based on a documentary of the same name, which is about the Theranos scandal and Elizabeth Holmes. Yeah, from like the late 2000s, early 2000 teens. I guess it was like 2007 to like 2012 or something. I don't know, that kind of time and space.
Yes.
Yeah, Elizabeth Holmes was she's still alive. She's brilliant, but some would say a con artist. I think that this show really does a great job at dramatizing historical factual events in a way that gives humanity to everyone, so it's not like it's a drama. The story, for those who don't already know, is Elizabeth Holmes is this very ambitious and brilliant woman who dropped out of Stanford, and in the tradition of geniuses of the Silicon Valley, like Zuckerberg and Bill Gates, and all these famous, super successful people who are dropouts, hence the Dropout. And she was found a lot of traction, getting a ton of money to fund what eventually was revealed to be a device that didn't work. But it was supposed to be this revolutionary blood testing device that could run multiple, we're talking like 200 different tests on a single drop of blood. And if it was real, that would have revolutionized the healthcare industry and people's own autonomy in their own testing, because that device could live in people's homes. So the beautiful thing, and why a lot of people really got involved, really like legit people got involved, is because the promise of that dream is like, it would help humanity so much. And so it's a bummer that it's not a thing, and that was all a fantasy. But she was very clever in the way that she was just very charismatic and got people's money. She was on Forbes, and she was notable for being like the first female tech billionaire. And it was all a scam, though, which, I mean, it's a true story. It's astounding. It's an incredible story.
It's interesting. I know that story. I saw the documentary and I read up on it because I was like very, interested in it. The documentary specifically about her. I don't think it was the documentary that you're talking about, The Dropout. It was another one that I forget what it was called. It was about the Theranos thing, but it was just, the charismatic thing. And it's just crazy to me how far people can get without actually having to show their work, for lack of a better term, because this thing, it wasn't like a thing like, oh, she got some money on some vaporware. Like, this was out. It was out in like Walmart and Walgreens, I think, and a lot of different place. Like, it went to market, you know what I mean, where they were using it and people use these tests, and it was just wild that it got that far, and to see all the people who worked with her. And that's where the sad thing, she may be like a tragic character, but it's equally tragic for the people who are scientists and worked in the field. But we're not talking about her story. This is all about you. It's awesome that you were bringing this story to light. Now, what can we expect in The Dropout? Like, how does it track with the documentary? Like, how would it, or I guess, I don't know if you could tell us about it, but what you can tell us of it, how's it track with that story?
Well, it stars Amanda Seyfried, and she plays Elizabeth Holmes. And so, I mean, the story is mostly like around her, but it does include all of the, not all, but a great many of like real life people who are also involved. I play one of them. I play Ana Arriola, who was one of the designers of the original iPhone at Apple, and then moved to Theranos for like a hot 4 months. And then she quit and she moved on. And she's like, I've kind of had to like internet stalk her for my job. So like, if she ever sees this, or anybody who knows her ever sees it, just know that I do so with love and professionalism. I'm not a real stalker. I keep on fearing she's going to like go to her LinkedIn and be like, who is this person who has watched me 104 times in one day? Like, yeah, it's like, no, it's just, I admire her, and getting to like see her, her talks and panels and everything. She's smart. She is a genius. And I love her design philosophy and her style. She's also a non-binary, trans feminine, queer woman of color. She's actually, I think, Mexican American, or has mixed ancestry. And so like when I first got the audition, I was a little paranoid just in terms of my own values and representation and just being accurate. But in an interview, I found one. She's like, if this is ever turned into a movie, I just want a trans woman of color to play me.
Hell yeah.
She didn't say she had to be Mexican American. And so I'm just like, you know what? We've ticked all the boxes. And then like in my money job, I'm a graphic designer. I work with Silicon Valley companies as clients. And so it's like I'm familiar with that of like, and my design philosophy as an artist and designer is similar to hers. So I'm like, you know what? I feel a kinship with this woman. I admire her. She's amazing. And and the production invited me to play her. So I feel very, I feel like artistically and like ethically, we're all kind of like feeling the same things about, how we want to honor the story and the real people who are part of it. Or at least, with the scenes that I'm in, the people I work with. I don't want to speak for everyone. Yeah. But it's good awesome energy.
That is awesome. I love it. Is this your first time playing a real person?
Yes. And wow. I feel so fortunate because how specific is that?
Yeah.
We in America get so many biopics of white people.
Yeah.
And then when we do have someone who is trans, they're too often played by cis actors or famous Americans played by Brits. Like I like sometimes artistically, I understand where some of the director's intentions come from. Like, was it I forget which role it was, or which director said it, but they commented that in order for this figure to be played, like it's so wrapped up in American bias that in order to really give a fresh humanity to it, like they went, I don't even remember, it was not American though, Canadian or South African or something. But it goes the opposite way too, where it's not even about famous people. Sometimes like Anthony Minghella said, I do remember the credits for this one, said in The Talented Mr. Ripley behind the scenes that he, for Jude Law's character, which is an uppity, posh, spoiled rich boy from like the, 40s or whatever, that the classism and elitism that is so central to making that role work is something so far removed from a modern American psyche that he knew he had to go British to find someone who would like still like know that so deep in their bones. And I'm just like, ooh, is that like a dig at Brits, or is it just like Jude Law's a great actor? Like,
yeah.
So it's like sometimes like all things being equal, right? Like white successful male with another white successful male mixed up, whatever. But when and even though like I love some performances by cis people in trans roles, and I'm glad those stories were told, and given the time, it's maybe the best that we could have hoped for. I'm thankful for that. But now we have to do better. We know better.
Hell yeah.
And I think I just read a thing where Alicia Vikander said about the Danish girl that during the time, like they were still aware of Eddie Redmayne being a cis actor playing a trans character. And that they wanted to be as sensitive as possible, but they realized it was problematic. And I think Redmayne has also said that these days, with today's perspective, they wouldn't have done that. And Vikander, I think, is an advocate and ally for LGBTQ people, because she really showed in that, in her comments, how important it is for not just trans people to tell our own stories, but for us to be able to play cis people too. And it's so true. Like, I think, I am all about sharing and equity. You can play me if I can play you.
Yeah.
But don't be taking my stories and making all the money off of it while I get nothing.
Exactly. Tell it.
Yeah. And then the representation isn't the same, like kind of across, the board. Like you can only like take from my culture, but I can't, filter in and take from yours, and there's no even exchange there, is what you're saying. So I also had a question about this, because you did say you did a little stalking, and you're playing a real person, and I saw that you do a little voice work as well. How deep did you get into playing this character? Like, did you get her voice, her mannerisms down, like or were you thinking about doing that? Like, how did that all play into it, or do you want to do that?
Well, that's one of those things, like that's what Amanda has to do for Elizabeth Holmes. I chose, at least with my audition, to just do Nicky's mashup, right? So it's like all the kind of principles, or at least that the real Ana has published or spoken about in interviews or presentations, like her principles. I'm like, I just need to have her principles and her ethics, which happen to align with my own. So it was lucky acting in that respect. But no, the voice, I was conscientious about the androgyny, that I was not, because she identifies as non-binary trans, just like me. And I figured a queer feminist such as herself and a queer feminist such as myself would be all like, you know what? If we were a person who's so in demand that Elizabeth Holmes considers us stolen, that she stole us from Apple, I think that we're smart enough and well-connected enough that we don't need to affect our voice to be accepted anymore. We walk in a room, especially in Silicon Valley, they know who we are. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm just using my own whatever. Ana Arriola is from California, so that did inform. I wasn't going to do an accent or anything. And so that was also lucky. I love doing dialects, but it was just, I just felt very connected to her in that way. But there was, after I got hired though, my first day, I received some direction from the director, Michael Showalter, who I really enjoy working with, by the way. And he didn't say it this way, but my research on Ana and kind of like putting together some of the things he was pitching me, I'm like, oh, be more chill, Nicky, be more chill. Because like, you watch Ana, she's so smart and she's so composed and professional and she's chill. She's got like an inner wisdom. And I am effervescent and ebullient and theatrical and histrionic. And that's just not, it's the opposite of chill. You know what I mean? So
it's what could be described as a lot.
A lot. And I put sprinkles everywhere of like glitter and shit. I hope I make people laugh. So it's like, I'm not insufferable, but like, I own the fact that I'm like a wide shot kind of person. So it's like, just tell me that I'm in like a medium close up and like, I'll adjust for you. But yeah, so finding her and making just, that would, I think, be the only really big thing that I really leaned into, and trusting the director and, what they're seeing behind the camera and everything, or on the monitor rather. And I love that because I'm an overconfident choice maker when it comes to acting. And I'm just like, look, this is my interpretation. I'm trained. I continue to train every week. Like, this is what I'm into. And this is what I have to offer for this role. I have a dozen other versions if you want to direct me, but this is the one I want to give you. And sometimes I'm going to get the part and sometimes I'm not. Yeah. But like, the great thing about a callback, if you get that opportunity, is you get to show the production team, like, I can take direction. Oh, do you want me to try something different? Like, oh, did you want me to try this in a different way? And then, because that's a whole nother skill, right? It's not even just the preparation and kind of the practice of trying it a few different ways and like not being married to any one thing. But it's also like that translation. because you don't always get a director who speaks the same creative language as you. And you can, I think it's definitely learnable. You can definitely work with or learn to work with many different artists. And I think I do that really well, but there's still a learning curve. So, and especially like in fast auditions, like commercial auditions, sometimes I'll get a redirect. I'm like, okay, okay, like I think I know what you mean, but I know we don't have another 2 minutes to talk about this, so I'm just gonna go with my gut.
Yeah.
Right. But like, yeah, right. So we've all been there. And then sometimes you'll get one and you'll really vibe with a director or a casting director, and they'll like give you just a note, and it's like, oh, I know exactly what you mean. In my gut, I'm gonna deliver my version of that, and we're all gonna have a merry time for the next 30 seconds. Like, but sometimes anyway, for this one, I felt again, like no one told me be chill. No one said be more like the real Ana. But what I interpreted, because I researched her and I watched her, I'm just like, okay, let's just lean into what I would call chill Ana and hope that that's what is working. So we'll see. But I very much admire her. She's received a new fan. So I'm, hopefully she doesn't think I'm terrible. Oh,
I love that. To follow up and I guess add on to Glenn's question, and you've already partially answered this, but how much research was the research challenging at all, or was it fun to like play a person that's actually living, to just study up, get ready? Were you already prepared once you landed the role before you hit the set, or were you still kind of learning along the way doing it? And so do you love that, or was it challenging, if you will?
I loved it. And it's challenging. I think there are, like everything, there's pluses or minuses. For my personal process, I do like the more information I'm given, that it's not about what they want, but it's more like what the project's about, or what a director what their vision is, or what the flavor, like it's so much more easier to audition for a show that's already on the air, where you could watch a few episodes, you can see the tonality, the timing, just sort of the overall aesthetic and messaging of a show, and versus like a pilot where it's all like, well, it's written well, this is what I know given on other things that I've read and seen, but like you could be totally wrong, or you could be right, but if interpreted it wrong. And again, so for me personally, it's always been a struggle about not trying to, and I don't know if this is an Asian thing or a perfectionist thing, but it's like trying to do the right way, right? And I feel like I've reached a point in my acting, at least, where I'm no longer concerned about the right way, other than like technically being heard and seen properly. That where it's like, but information is helpful. It helps me make choices that are for this project, not just for my own artistic fantasy, right? Because I could have a great idea that's not appropriate for this show, or not appropriate for this genre. And like, I'm not intimidated by that. That actually makes me feel more creative. So it was a blessing to be able to audition for a real person who is part of media. She participates in, so like finding videos of her doing her thing was pretty easy. And so that's a blessing, because, if it's a historical figure, especially a historical figure that people outside academia or whatever wouldn't know, it's actually harder to research them, so it kind of all depends. And then true stories too, that take place in a real world or a history, like the extra dramaturgy that you do, sort of like little mystery history project, like, okay, what happened in 2007? Who was president? What was a big natural disaster? What was I thinking? What did I not know? The iPhone was like the biggest tech news in that year, and I'm part of that. So from that perspective, being part of the team that made it, as opposed to just a consumer, like how does that major benchmark in the history of tech, and the history of digital? Like, so it's kind of all that thing. And I try not to be too heavy about it, because I think, like, again, just like there's the research part that I do. And then I don't necessarily have an organized way in which I incorporate that into a character. It's more just a point of view, like given circumstances, like in this place, in this time, with these things that are important to this character, like how does that affect what I want right now in this scene, you know? So yeah.
I don't. Yeah, you're 100% right. I don't know how they would have handled being a person who's creating the hottest thing that basically is about to revolutionize the world. Like, how did they not go full Kanye? I would have been like, you see what's in your pocket? You see what's in everybody else's pocket? I made that. I put that there. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. I feel like it'd be very difficult not to go full Kanye on that situation. But so I saw the special, your comedy special, which was called remind me what the name was again.
Asian Americanized, an immigrant comedy special.
Exactly. So that was very, very funny. As a comedian, I know that it takes a lot to get up on stage, figure things out, get things going. And then when you have to do another job, right? Like director, actor, whatever, you basically have to put on another hat. So you have to switch up modes or whatever. How was that for you going from coming off your special, coming off, doing the comedy, coming off doing open mics and whatnot, and then moving into a role? Like, how long does it take you to get into that mode? And do you have techniques for getting into that mode?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. For me, it's all the same. Not the same. Let me take that back a step. I consider existentially, I guess, or identity wise, myself as artist. So part of, and usually in front of camera artist or performance artist. So my, I guess, approach, philosophy, and process is very similar. It's kind of just a medium switch. And I'm learning voiceover. And what's most challenging for me there is just the techniques of the medium being different. I joked something about, I don't know, as my coach said something, and she's like, it's just like on camera. I'm like, I appreciate you saying that because it does help. However, if I was doing this scene on camera, I would just feel something very specifically and look at you. None of that comes out of my mouth. Yeah. So it is different. It is different. Right. And so for me, it's about kind of switching the headspace technically. And to be clear, I am one of those artists. I love the technique. I love, knowing the difference between oil and watercolor. I like the different brushes. I like the different effects. I like the different things that we do. As artists, I think all of that translates to different mediums, if not directly, then conceptually. The more I learn, I am not musically talented. I am not a musician, but the more I study and learn about music theory, music composition, and kind of the mechanics of music, the more I learn about comedy, the more I learn about voiceover, the more I learn about movement, as opposed to movement in body, as opposed to movement in face. It's all related, or at least that's the way I work, is that kind of integrative approach. But yeah, for me, the challenge always for a character is just the believing, which I mean is the most fundamental thing that you do as an actor. Just believe that you're this person in this time and place who wants this thing and fears this other thing. It seems so elementary, and when you're a kid and you're playing pretend, you don't even think about story or technique or blocking or lighting or any of that stuff, right? But I guess for me, there's always, just because certain things are so important to me that if I'm playing a character who is actively interested or actively queer, in a way that it's part of their journey or story or dialogue in the story, I'm in it. It's so easy for me to just, because that is something that's so important in the work that I do. Because I believe my kind of advocacy is in my art. It's just part of my identity, and I put it out there, and I always want to be punching up and inspiring and educating and including as much as I can. So if I get And actually, to be honest, I don't think I've ever worked a character that wasn't like me. And that's an esoteric, like philosophical conversation. Like every character is a little, I mean, whatever. Characters are a collaborative project.
Yeah.
Only like in the audition, which some actors, and I would say I'm one of these actors, I think that's the purest kind of moment where you get to exist as artiste actor, whereas like you gave me 3 pages of dialogue for a show that doesn't exist yet. I have zero backstory as who I'm supposed to be or why I'm here, other than the context clues of this one scene. So I get to invent all this other stuff that it should be plausibly relevant. I can't just, I'm an elephant tamer from, no. Like, this says you have kids, so you're a mom, right? Like, but then I get to have choices about that. Like, did I want to be a mom all along, or did I find myself in this position? Does the scene give me clues about that? Yes, no. Oh, no, I just mentioned that I have kids in passing. Oh, well, there's an opportunity for me to have a spin on what my character's point of view about that is. Is there any other information that would inform how much I care about others as opposed to how I center myself, right? And so there's like, I love that detective work. But then the thing is, let's say you book it, right? You actually get paid to do what you love. Then it's and I've experienced this on the Dropout. That character isn't, I mean, she's also a real person. So it's like, she doesn't belong to anyone but the real person, really. But this character is now a product of the real Ana Arriola and what she has done and said publicly on record. It's how the showrunner and writers have interpreted her and placed her in the story. And played her off of other characters. It's how the director wants her to exist in that world. It's what I bring to her to make her a plausible human that you would believe and care about. And it's a collaborative effort. So this version of Ana Arriola in The Dropout is created by a lot of different people. And I believe all people with honorable, good intentions to be honest and to not judge the real person so much as use whatever is the most relevant to her participation in terms of Elizabeth's journey into a dramatized way. But also, just side note, I do feel like I am well looked after artistically, professionally on set. And also I believe that the character of Ana is treated with respect and honesty. And I mean, she puts her beliefs out there, so it's not a guessing game. But it's like a paranoia that I've had in the past, that I still always have, is how much am I going to have to advocate for the people in order to play this and put this out in the world and have my name on a project that 100 other people participated in that I maybe never met or had any conversations with. So if there's a line that is problematic, if there's a word that shouldn't be used, if there's, and sometimes it's, well, like for instance, in this, in this story, because it's in 2007, the term people of color or people of the global majority wasn't a thing really. And so one of my dialogues, I mentioned non-white people. And I'm like, okay, so if this wasn't a time period piece and my character wasn't contextualizing this in an appropriate punching up kind of way. As artist, like I'm in that weird position where like, oh, do I tell all these writers and the director and the producer, do I make a stink about, I'd rather say this, or can we get a consultant? I mean, I don't feel any of this show is all great. So it's not this show, but it's those little, and I've been in other positions and other jobs where that was welcomed. And that was also beautiful when, all the writers, a showrunner or whatever, they're, I say, oh, can I talk to you about something? And they're just like, yes, please. And thank you. Let's hug it out. Let's find a solution. Thanks for being part of our team. And like nothing is more beautiful than that. Especially when we're dealing with, marginalized people and like lived experiences, not just pontificating academically, like anthropologically about, social systems, but like people's actual lives and experience that they're telling stories about. It's important.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that we're talking about this, because some people will encounter that and be afraid and scared. I don't know. I've said it in different ways in different projects that I've been involved with, but there's various ranges. So and it just needs to be said. And I love this conversation, and I feel this so much as an artist, and I love that you have, at least we're given a safe space to, I would say, right? And you said that they were with you along that journey.
I've been really lucky.
Yeah.
I've been really lucky in the projects that I've been able to work on, where I do. But and that's one of those things too. It's like I'm also just kind of overconfident. So I grew up bullied my whole life, and at a certain point, I was like 16 or 17, and I just said never again. And I am sure that I have lost professional opportunities because I have a big mouth and people thought that I was too opinionated. I mean, granted, I was also in my 20s and probably was not the most tactful in my approach. So that's also on me. Learned from it. I'm much more diplomatic now that I'm grown. But the principle is, it's like we shouldn't all, just by virtue of coming from historical oppression, well, current oppression, but like coming from a long history of having no voice, that suddenly we have a voice. And so now we're supposed to be advocates for ourselves, and we're supposed to have to do the educating and the emotional burden, and then even consider our approach. So let's say we are being abused, or not even abused. Let's say we are just being sidelined, and which I guess is abuse. Anyway, Nikki, the point, it would be nice if I could just be artist, be talent, be hired help. Whatever, just show up and do a job and not have to be like marketing person, brand person, diplomat, educator, advocate, hand holder, consultant. Like all of those should be bonuses that they put on my paycheck, or, give me a separate 1099, even I'll pay taxes on it. You know what I mean? Like, it's got, and to a lot of, maybe not a lot, but to some film sets and television show productions credit, they do now have either consultants or make sure that their writer's room or production staff includes people with diverse experiences and who's are part of the core team to begin with. So they get ahead of any kind of sticky, problematic things that could be abusive or damaging to, by the time we, the talent, which are usually like the last people to join a project. And even then it's like, we're not there as long as, everyone else. By the time it even gets to us. But if I were to have any advice to anyone, I'd be like, you always got to stand up for yourself. Do it in the most professional way that you'll stand by and it'll hold up in court and that you're always punching up. But whatever you need to do, even if it's just no is a complete sentence.
What's so funny? Like when you watch movies or you watch a TV show, there's always that person who is like, they say no, they stand up and they say something, spunky to like the big guy, and everyone else is like, huh? But then the big guy always laughs. He's like, you got spunk, kid. I want you to be my right hand man. And that never happens in real life. That's not like a real thing. So I am an idiot. So I watch TV and I'm like, oh, I'll do that. And then I do that in my professional life too. And then have a big mouth or whatever. And I feel kindred spirit with you. You're like you say the thing, you're like, oh, I thought they were going to take me under their wing. And then I would be, because I stood up for myself. But it's like, that's not how it goes.
If only we were all protagonists on our own show. You know what I mean? Although I will say to the credit, I think so long as the intention is, it's the principle of the thing and this is not okay, as opposed to I feel personally offended and it's about the bigger picture. I have, in my experience, not so much had someone, I like you, kid, I'll take you under my wing, and it suddenly becomes the Nicky show. But I've had earned the respect and notice of people in power who take me more seriously. And just it's a more intimate, joyous working environment. Yeah. So it's kind of like that professional respect and friendship has been forged because they're all like, you can stand up for yourself without disrespecting me. And you've given me the opportunity to use my power to make things better for everyone. And it's worked. So I'm lucky. I'm lucky that that's been the majority of my experiences thus far.
I love it. I love it. I'm so inspired by that. And I just love that energy, Nicky. When going back to the Dropout, because we also, like I said, I want to tell a little bit of your origin story. Was this filmed during the pandemic? And how was it? Or like, right, was it around when we were initially talking to you? And when can we expect to see it?
Oh yeah, it's been in production for a long time. I think it was announced in 2018 even.
Okay.
We started production, I think in March. I don't know, it's like this spring. And I think it's probably going through the fall, probably. Not quite sure. But I'm hoping it'll be released in 2022 at some point. I don't know their schedule, but it's in regards to the pandemic though, it's like I'm not thankful for the pandemic. I will say I'm not thankful for the pandemic itself, but I'm finding silver linings. Yeah. One of the silver linings is that I do love how just hygiene and sanitation is a mainstream, not like necessarily anxiety based thing. It's just best practice. And I do like how that's been normalized. There was one project I did where like they had to sort of spray the interior of a car down with like alcohol each time before you got in. And they were so sweet. They're like, oh, I'm sorry, it's just going to smell a little, just air it out. And I was like, no. Give me the sanitization, like give it to me. You know what I mean? It makes me feel safe. It makes me, because I am a cleaner. And I love what it's done for hugging. Like I'm very much a consent advocate, and that includes like hugging. Like I ask for permission. Yeah. You know, hey, can I give you a hug? Or can we do a hug? And some of these people say no. I'm like, well, thanks for taking care of yourself and your boundaries. I love that you said no thanks. Let's just share a moment together. Yeah. And that's just as great. And I love practicing at that level. So something with like social distancing, I'm loving not shaking people's hands. I'm loving not giving people hugs. Yeah. And then the times where I really want to, it's, you know, kind of sad, but it's a principle of the thing. It's like, well, that mutual respect and love, it will exist whether or not we're touching each other. And for people who hadn't thought about that kind of mutual respect, now we have to. So I am thankful for that. And Hollywood sets did not let up on any of the mask or whatever stuff in that brief period of time between fully vaccinated and, oh no, the fully vaccinated people don't have to wear masks inside together anymore. And then they're like, ooh, guess what? Delta variant has changed that. That magical 2 weeks before Delta variant, guess again. We didn't do, it was still everyone's mask on, and only the people on camera get to take off our masks, and it's only for when we shoot. So the makeup people are working triple, fixing every little.
That moment, it was like a horror movie, you know, where you think the killer's dead, and then he's like in the ground or laying down, and then reaches back up, and you got to fight them all again, and that's the real end of the third act, where you got to really figure out how to get rid of them. It's like, oh man,
yes,
I thought we were done with this horror movie.
Everybody, and you know what's worse is that so many people are rushing to be the first ones to be stabbed. They're like running up, they're opening the door when they shouldn't open the door.
Right. Going to investigate. Let's go check.
I don't want to get vaccinated. Oh, I'm vaccinated. I don't need a mask. It's like, oh, bitch, open the door. Don't close the door. Close the door. Put on the mask. Put on the mask.
I've got to give props to to how some of the sets are. Like I recently, like I said earlier, I worked on a Netflix project. They separated out background from the day players and different zones, and we even had to watch like a video before we hit the set. Like they had like this online system, even for like our paperwork that we had to do prior to, like it was all web-based now. I absolutely love it, and I hope they continue with that just to make it easier and tracking the information, you know, even going forward with like working on a production. I just love it. And well, I just love how that's handled now, and just this transitioning to utilizing platforms that they weren't using before that they should have used, and just keeping us safe, and just the business aspect of it I really appreciate as a business person myself, you know. So good stuff. So let's get a bit of the origin story, and then again coming back to celebrate and looking forward to when the Dropout drops. We already know a little bit about you due to you putting yourself in your acts with Asian Americanized, which I love. Again, to me, some of the best comedy, and that's what drew me to Glenn, is when you can identify through the work and also laugh and cry all at the same time. That to me is that personal touch that I really appreciate as comedians, and with actors as well, when you put yourself into these roles. So can you start from the beginning a little bit about your journey that we kind of got from the special, to find out how you became as amazing as you are and as powerful as you are, and fearless, that I just absolutely adore, and I'm striving to be myself. Can you take us back to the beginning of your journey?
Oh, that means the world to me. Thank you for that. I will take that compliment. Because it was hard won. It is hard won. I'm still unpackaging it, a lot of it today. And actually now you inspired me. It's almost like I want to reverse engineer that. Because like this is like my process, right? I want to understand things. I want to understand myself. I want to understand. And I'm like, so for instance, I've said even today, like I tend to be overconfident. And like I say that tongue in cheek, because it's not like, oh, I do things blindly and stupidly, just hoping that I'll get, like Indiana Jones, like I'll just run through a field of bullets and not get shot. You know what I mean? Like, but it's that gumption, the nerve that you have when the whole world tells you that not only are you trash or are you a monster, but you shouldn't even exist. Wow. And to just walk in the room defiantly and say, oh, you know what? I'll do you one better. Not only do I exist, but I love myself. Trump, deal with that. Like you failed in making me hate myself. So I guess game over. And that has kind of just become my mantra. And when I'm around other people, it's like, I got in an argument the other day because I was feeling disappointed in, I think it was about the non-vax, whatever. I was feeling disappointed in humanity. Surprise. And I received feedback. It's like, Nicky, did you ever think that maybe like you just have too high of expectations of other people? And I'm like, but I don't expect, like, I'm like, other than me feeling disappointed by what's going on, I'm not judging. I don't think, oh, you need to be this kind of person. But then they're all like, no, but think about it this way, right? Like you got vaccinated or whatever, and you continue to wear a mask, not just because for your own health, but for basic virology, right? That the fewer bodies we keep the viruses in, the fewer chances it gets to mutate and therefore undermine all of our work in vaccines. Now, it's not just a matter of having an interest in science, of knowing about that, but just caring. Yeah. In general, just caring. And that if that's your default, we don't see people as they are. We see people as we are. And so you're disappointed because you think people should be more like you. And I'm like, oh, okay, I own that. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I'm like, but what is so bad about the way I want people to be? I want people to be confident. I want them to love themselves. I want them to be able to congruently live their actions, their thoughts, their feelings, put out in the world what they genuinely, truly think about and care about. I want people to care about what's below the surface superficially. I want people to enjoy the frivolity of the superficiality without making that like the end point. I want people to push themselves, not to be better than each other, but to be better than they were to yesterday. I want people to be gentle on themselves and not beat themselves up. And I'm just like, well, where did all of this come from? Right? And like, oh, from my past. So reverse engineering that, right? I'm like, all right, so if I'm so well, and I came across a meme on Instagram too about like queer people today, where it's like, what it's a gift. I think it's a gift to be queer, and especially genderqueer. It's a gift. I consider it a gift because it's almost like I had no choice in order to prioritize my own happiness. I had no choice but to say, fuck the patriarchy, fuck the cishet normative script that I am supposed to follow. It's not for me. Because in that, I came to realize, oh, it's also not actually there for straight cis people either. It's just more fucked up systems of oppression and toxic expectations. And I can't even speak to the ultimate design. Was it capitalist design? Was it power design? Maybe it's a little bit of all of that. But ultimately, I think that it's such a gift to like not exist outside of it, but to have an internal dilemma that is only a dilemma,
right?
Because it's framed within this thing that I think hurts everybody, but invalidates who I am. So it's a very it's a fundamental kind of existential paradox, right? Where it's like, okay, this system says I shouldn't exist, but I do because I'm me and my consciousness is self-aware. Therefore, what? I have to question everything that I'm told that is right and wrong. I have to think. I have to care. I have to investigate. Right? I wasn't born a scholar. I'm not an academic. I'm not any of these things. I'm just a queer person who's trying to figure out why some people hate me for no reason. I'm just a person who is trying to figure out why I'm other. Why am I different? And then I took it and I fucking ran with it. I'm like, okay, you know what? You're going to other me and I can't figure out why. I'm going to take that. I am now unique. I'm the uniqueness that you all say that you want. Oh, we want a new idea. We want something unique. We want something fresh. And I'm like, you know what? I will fucking commercialize the hell out of that then. Okay, well, I'm your new, you're fresh, you're trendy, and all of that stuff. And it becomes problematic when, you get those negative, like, transphobic and homophobic things that, oh, it's a phase or it's a trend. It's like, no, it's a changing thing where the younger generation is starting to reject these bullshit tropes that generations before them, excuse me, have said are default normal. It's not a trend, it's a revolution. So you can use whatever words you want, but it's happening whether you like it or not. So try to understand it or just complain and watch your values change. Like it's happening. But yeah, for me, it was a survival thing where it's like, if I can't beat them and I don't want to join them, I'm just going to make my own. I'm going to take my ball and go home. And for me, it's, entering then into entertainment was then advantageous because I think in entertainment, they're always looking for something that stands out. Something that speaks to a human experience from another perspective. And I think that's what really, and you spoke to it, Glenn, like what bonds us all in comedy, right? Is that human element. And what I love most about comedy is that it only works when it's authentic, which means it has to come genuinely from an individual artist's lived experience. You're a hack if you copy anyone else. You're a hack if you speak outside of your actual experiences. And it is so easy to tell when someone is a hack and when they are being authentic. You just, no matter how good a bullshitter a person thinks they are, people are smarter at detecting deception than I think we think. But it's that the beautiful irony of that, and I would say irony is part of all humor, where it's like, I need to see your difference I need you to celebrate your difference and your humanity that is not me, that has nothing to do with me, in order for me to feel connected to you as a fellow human being. And I just love that paradoxical, quizzical kind of cognitive dissonant, like, I just think that's beautiful. For me, that's like where the spiritual part of art is. And my favorite part of being an artist, and especially when I get to do like live stuff with comedy and everything, because you get that feedback right away in a laugh, you know. And it's just that crystal clear ring of connectedness that is a laugh that I think is just so pure.
You know, like going back to what you were saying in terms of basically respect, I think is like kind of like the bottom line, and respect for people. It's we're in this weird thing where I think people have not respected each other for so long. Now everything is coming back, and it seems very intense. It's almost like people are yelling in each other's face, like, respect me, please, like, see me, you know. And I think if we were more kind to each other and did respect those things, I don't think the fervor would be as much. I think people would, you know, understand. They're like, now we're at the point where knowing you can't, we're tired of it being a mistake, you know, we're tired of being, oh, it's my bad, it was overlooked or whatever. So now we're kind of forcing that. I just love the conversation that we're having. And, you know, you pivoted to something that is very near and dear to my heart, which is comedy. Have you been doing a bunch of comedy, and have you seen it evolve some over the course of like this pandemic? And you know, basically how has your comedy been going?
That's a good question. I only have recently, since becoming fully vaccinated, really even re-engaged with comedy in LA. Like on Netflix as an audience member, I've been keeping up. But I've been out of the loop, quite frankly, because I was depressed and anxious. I mean, I'm not the only one. But like through, I guess, most of the pandemic, because lockdown happened like days after Ana, Aiden, and I shot our special. And so it was cool, like, all the editors were not doing anything, so we could work on it during the pandemic, like the post-production. But I hadn't, like, I've been keeping notes and kind of keeping my journaling and my kind of idea books going. But the thing though is that I think so much of, I mean, I've written a lot of like the sort of memoir-esque, thing, one person show kind of personal history. Like that's sort of I guess that's where I'm at right now in my comedy. And I felt like anything that I was observing about the pandemic, like everyone was also like, I didn't feel very original. And to be fair, it's like, it's new to everyone. So a lot of us are going to come into it with similar ideas, or I would find an idea that's uniquely my own, but I was in such a dark place. I wasn't punching up. And for me, and just for the viewers, we say punching up versus punching down. Punching up, you punch up at systems and ideas that affect all of us or harm certain people. I personally, part of my brand and the only comedy that I care to watch is punching up. I hate watching comedy that punches down, which is victimizing, because every joke has a victim, victimizing or targeting an idea or a person or a system that's already vulnerable, that's already has the short end of the stick. And I think that's low blows. I think it's cheap. I think it's hacky. I don't think it requires, that's racist jokes. That's homophobic jokes. That's misogynist jokes. Those are not, first of all, they don't require you to care that much. In fact, they ask you to not care, and they don't ask you to think that much. How ironic can you be if you're just making fun of someone tastelessly? But enough of that rant. I was not finding because my personal brand is punching up. I don't want to put out any art that punches down, even if in my notes I have to go through that as a process to get to somewhere else. That's never going to be even a first draft of something that I let anyone else read. That is a process thing. I don't believe in it. It's not what I'm about. And all of my jokes were not funny. Some of them were honest observations, but I haven't been able to set them up or frame them in a way that makes them surprising and amusing as a joke would be. And too frequently I was finding the victim was the human race, which can be funny, but I wasn't able to put an original twist on it. Like, well, that's what Nicky is going to do with this and give it a sophisticated Nicky spin or whatever. It was just, oh, look, Nicky's complaining about shit that everyone's worried about. How is that new or unique to me? Anyway, and I've had, other comic friends like say, you got to be gentler on yourself. We're all in this together. Like, no one's expecting you to be a fucking genius with the pandemic. I mean, Chappelle did a fucking show in the pandemic, and that was brilliant in Chappelle's signature way, but it was still bound by the constraints of what was happening. I mean, he even did it outside with socially distanced, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's still present. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm so happy that other comics have stuck with it, have done the Zoom, have grown their art. For me, it was, a mental health break. And I'm glad it's what I needed. I'm glad I took it. I wish I knew that I was taking it at the time rather than just, being a vegetable in bed for half the day. But, like now I can joke about it. So,
right.
So sometimes it's just, what is that? It's that famous thing, right? Like the pain plus time or struggle or suffering plus time equals comedy.
Yeah.
I forget who said that. I don't know who said, somebody famous.
Yeah, and now we've all had a lot of that. We've had a lot of struggle, pain, and time. So there should be a lot of good comedy. I hope it's not too good because I'd like to get on stage, and I don't want it to over. And I'd love for you to get on stage too.
No, you rise into the occasion. You're good.
I know, right?
Good.
Let's rise to the occasion.
I will say though that because of Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, the election of 2020, and the pandemic, I do need to rewrite some of my jokes because even though I've always been punching up, there are certain baseline assumptions that I have made from the audience point of view that are just in a different era. And so I'm finding that my first challenge emerging from, pandemic hiatus in terms of joke writing is that I need to, and sometimes it's just one word. Sometimes it's just finding a different setup, same punchline, but it's like I'm tweaking some stuff just because I just don't think it's just not framed in a post-pandemic or in a mid-pandemic. I should say a post-first wave.
Right.
Like we're living in a new reality. And I want my comedy to be about today, not about, oh, how funny was this 2 years ago? You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. All right, I got to take us back to your story again, Nicky. I love all this. We go on tangents, but I love it because you just drop in so much knowledge. And like, I need you in my everyday life because I just get just your words are inspiring, man. Just you have that self, like you already said that you know who you are, you rep it, and I like to think I'm that way sometimes, but just I am nowhere near the bravado that you got and that power and that spirit. Like I love it. You're so lit, so lit. So. When did that happen though? Like these are just like all these other questions like I want to know, and then and that's why I wanted to dive into your history because I've spoken about it when on Dropout show, my Filipinx show, where I did I have a bunch of my Filipinx people come on and we tell their stories. But part of my story that I've shared where I found self-confidence for myself was when I got to a significant low point in my life when I was serving in the military and I almost committed suicide. And I threw the knife in the water and I reported myself to the officer of the deck and they put a watch on me because, I was about to just give it all up. But, but through that is where I gained the confidence that I'll never, ever, ever get to that low point again. And then, I attribute everything to that moment now because I survived that moment. So like, what was it for you that got you to that point? So you said you and you've already discussed this, that you were bullied so much. When did you finally say, fuck that, no, I'm not going to take this anymore, and you created this amazing person that you are now?
Oh yeah. I don't know if there's a single moment, but what you just shared really resonates because I do think that it's the choosing of life. You know, it's not just, oh, by default I'm alive and so therefore I continue on unless things get too bad, but the choice where for me it was a similar situation. You know, it's suicidal ideation and I guess without getting too psychologically like specific, it was similar. It got to the point where there was like an attempt and and I chose life. And I find too, because of that, a lot of my best friends and closest people in my life have and continue to be sober addicts or people in recovery or Buddhists. Because the thing I think that we share in common spiritually or just deep in our guts, and I think you get this too, is that it's not just a magical thing that happens and you're okay. Every moment you choose life, every moment you choose sobriety, every moment you are mindful about where you are in the world and what you're doing. And sometimes you need a break. Sometimes you need to sleep in. Sometimes you need to game for 4 hours. Sometimes you just need to eat that whole pizza all by yourself. And that's great because it's like, so long as it's still framed in that I'm doing this for me and not I'm trying to escape all this other stuff, right? It's, you know, it's just a fundamentally different point of view, I think. And for me, it's the choosing of life. It's just the choice, not taking for granted that I have the choice and that it is a choice. And recognizing that I'm fortunate enough to live in a place and time in the world in which I'm afforded even an illusion of choice. Yeah, but you know, I mean, keeping it real though, I'd say even, you know, no matter how much people are suffering and no matter where, to choose life is fundamental to everything else that follows. And yeah, so I was bullied and I was othered. I'm an adopted kid. I'm Asian and my parents are white. And so I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin and surrounded by white folks. Like there were like a handful of other Asian folks. It was like one Hmong family, and the rest of us were also adopted people by white people. So it was very homogeneous in culture and look. And like, you know, I talked about how important it is that representation matters. You know, it's like my partner has a big family. So he gets to see his physical likeness represented in the phenotype of DNA expression in uncles and cousins and ancestors. And it's just such an interesting concept to me because that's something I've never experienced. Other than the racist, everybody Asian looks like me. There's like, you know, how interesting and, you know, affirming or validating or maybe scary if you have a shit family who are terrible and they all look like you and they're like, what a curse. But like, you even just to have that as a concept or an experience, like I don't have that. And so when I was othered by others growing up, it just was cumulative in a way that just made me very self-reliant. And I thank my parents and my sister for creating a home environment where there was unconditional love and support. And I tell my sister, I'm so grateful that she was such a basic bitch growing up because I had got to have a girlhood vicariously through her, even though I was assigned male at birth and raised a boy. So, you know, like, what did I do with my boyhood? Played with Barbies and did her hair and did dress up and like all these stereotypically coded feminine things. Of course, she also ended up playing sports and doing all these coded I had zero interest in any of that. But like, that was all like, I wasn't punished for that. I wasn't sent to a pray away the gay. I wasn't told that I was wrong or that I personally was less. There was concern that because I am me, sensitive artist, queer as fuck, would have a harder life and that I was more likely to be a target of violence, both, you know, just the microaggressions and sort of the societal violence that is put upon people who don't fit in, and physical violence. Because I grew up during the Matthew Shepard era. And so once, his murder happened and was all over the news, in a rural place in America, that just hit very close to home for me personally. And I was put in martial arts. My mom said it was to get me in touch with my Asian heritage.
Wow.
Right. Which, and all the instructors were white Americans. But it's cool though. Like I don't, martial arts is an important bridge, I think, culturally.
Yeah.
And there are different schools that have different sort of philosophies. I am thankful that the white people in charge of my first martial arts school were very into upholding the Korean customs. They were ambassadors. So I thank them for that. No shade. But it was just, again, ironic to me that, the Asian needs to be taught Asian shit by the whites. But it was also, Nicky might get hate crime now, so we got to make sure they can kick some ass. And I'm like, all right. And that martial arts really is where the seed of confidence was sown, because it's what I love about martial arts, and it's similar with yoga, dance, anything kind of, and music, I would even say, where it's I guess martial arts for me personally is the best example of this, because it's that mastery of body in a way that is very literally self-defense. You can learn to have a relationship with your body through dance and yoga, yes, but there is something metaphorical about learning violence to protect yourself and people that you love, as opposed to learning violence to do harm to others. And if anything, it's about neutralizing violence and meeting it where it is, right? I'm not training to be a violent person who knows how to kill people. I am training to meet the worst of that violence in a way where we can neutralize it so that nobody is in a position to harm anyone else. I have the power over it, at least.
I love that you brought up martial arts, because it's something that I have done before, and I know that with my son now that I would want him to get into it. And I know you said learn violence. I think, in my opinion, I think people should know violence, because there's a lot of people who are, even nowadays, just walking around with no idea that harm can come to them, and they never take the time to know it. And then there's that other step of learning it. I think, a lot of people get to know violence through seeing it at home and in terrible ways or whatnot. But to learn it is to know it in a different fashion. And once you know that is in the world, it actually, it changes the way that you interact with other people as well, because you know that is not that it's an option, but it's always was like there. It's effervescent. Is that the word? No, what's the word? Omnipresent. It's always
omnipresent.
It's omnipresent. It's always around you, and it can always be around you, and it can be enacted upon you unless you learn to use it in your own defense, and that confidence that you gain from it can be super helpful. So that is great. And that's also something that I did not know about you, because I knew, the artist part, the comedian part, but this is another one. So I'm like, this is my homie right now. You know what I mean?
That's why we do this, Glenn.
Yeah. So what
I can't believe I didn't write a joke about martial arts. I should write a joke about that. I guess I hold it as kind of a holy thing. It's hard to say how's that funny?
How good were you at the martial art that you were in? Which one was it, by the way? Which one?
I started off studying Hwarangdo, which is an old it's an ancient Korean art form that includes both hard and soft styles, and they have some terrific mythology, and like their it's the way of the flowering nights, and I think it was taught actually to the concubines of the king in ancient Korea, or Silla as it was called at the time, and they would like protect him. And so I loved also the history that was taught to women, that it wasn't a tradition that was like only men in the army or whatever, right? And there's these fantastic, it's like very like that wire fu, kung fu action movie stuff, where it's like there are ways to make one's body lighter, or they could like telekinetically sort of control their swords in battle, and just all these cool kinds of. It's just very, in practice, it's not magical, of course, but there's all those kind of martial artsy folkloric sort of elements that I really like with like an old art form. But I was, a teenager at the time. I was in school. I was also doing theater. It's just because after maybe your first 2 or 3 belts leveling up, martial arts is cumulative. You don't just learn a new tick, a couple new bullet points per belt in the syllabus. You learn exponentially more per level and have to perfect all the things that you learned before, because the way of martial arts, and I think I only studied Korean and Japanese martial arts. Is it that Kung Fu itself means like to constantly be improving or something? That it's like the way of making yourself better. And I think a thing all martial arts have in common is that it's not a competition with other people, even though there are athletic competitions. But that ultimately it's the competition within yourself and the challenging of yourself. And there's an innate humility with martial arts that I really love, that asks you not to be like socially humble, although that is also encouraged, but that like the way you process where you're at in life or what things you're working on at a given time is the humility to realize where you need to work to be able to say, I'm not that good at that yet, or I need some work to get to this level doing this one thing. This area I'm pretty good at right now, so I'm going to focus on this thing instead. There's no judgment. It's just what are you working on? And then you're a black belt, the top level belt, master level, as opposed to a brand newbie who doesn't even know how to stand properly. And you're still working on that same attitude, except for by the time you're a black belt, you just have a million other things to work on. So it's not that you get like better at it's just there's more to work on the better you get. I would say it's the same in everything, whether it be plumbing or acting or writing jokes or being a parent. You get better with practice, and the better you get, the more challenges you have. And so it's constantly rising to the occasion and never settling for less than your best, but also realizing that your best will change from day to day. There's no judgment. You just have to do your best, whatever that means. And I love how martial arts and that philosophy is simultaneously hard enough on yourself to hold yourself accountable, but gentle enough with yourself to cut yourself a break. And so like Dominique, well, I love Dominique Dawes too, but I grew up in the 90s, so she's always on my lips.
I know exactly where you're going.
Simone Biles last week. Love her too. And Dominique Mosiano, who also like came out with a statement yesterday. Anyway, whatever. There was lots of Dominiques very famous in gymnastics in the 90s. But Simone Biles, the champion of the moment, like what she has demonstrated, winning gold medals with broken toes, taking a break, and then coming back to balance beam saying, I'm just doing it for me, and getting a fucking like bronze medal. I mean, like champion level. But like what I love in this story is like I'm overlaying my own, interpretation and biases on what is, she has made history, I think, for mental health and for athletics and for women of color in sports, all of that. But that, again, that elite training, whether it's gymnastics or martial arts, we have to take care of ourselves. We have to have the humility to say, people are going to call us a quitter. Fuck them. I got the twisties. I'm not going to break my neck to please you. And then also it's like, you know what? I'm ready. And it's not for you. It's for me because I love this. And, you want to give me a medal for it? Great. It just proves, that just goes to prove how hard I work and how seriously I take this. And so it's the same thing with martial arts. I think it's not about, I want to be a black belt. It's, I just love martial arts and I love what it gives me. And I love the way of martial arts. And eventually, if I stick with it, I'll be a black belt. And that's when I'm a black belt, I'll work on new things. And that's just it. But I didn't always have that perspective. I started out in martial arts thinking, I just want to be Xena Warrior Princess. And when I tested, because I was a busy kid, I ended up, my school offered sort of a more condensed curriculum that took all the soft style grappling weapons work, or no, not weapons. We did some weapons out of it and just stuck the curriculum to the hard style self-defense stuff only. So I did get a black belt in that when I was 16. And for my final test, I got to choreograph my own form. And so I did it too. Xena's theme song, and I did a whole Xena thing. Because of course it's like I'm a martial artist, but I'm also an actor, and I'm gonna do an action scene. Like, you gave me creative freedom, that's what I'm gonna do. But then I went to college, and I stopped. But I've been on and off with different schools throughout my adulthood. It's just the thing, it's like quality education isn't free, and sometimes I can only afford to train for a couple years and then have to take a break. But the thing is, it's like the more you learn, and the more like I still am able to practice things on my own. And you can never practice your basic stances and your basic kicks enough. Like there's always
true.
something to work on.
So true.
Yeah. So it's like when Biles talked about the twisties, I'm just like, oh, there's a name for that. And gymnasts know it well, because martial arts experience that too. I'm like, okay, yesterday I could jump, heel, spin, kick into like a round off. And today I can't even like jump and turn around without falling over. What is going on? Is it like an inner ear thing? Is it like, who knows? But like, it has happened to me. I've experienced it at the low amateur level. I believe her when she's like, I'm not going to break my neck.
Literally.
In Tokyo for y'all. Like, I believe her. It's a thing.
Oh, I love that. Man. Again, I'm like looking at the time, and I'm like, I have so many more questions, Nicky, because you are just your spirit. I'm throwing flowers at you constantly. I apologize, but when you
don't apologize. I'll take them.
Spread
them around. We'll share them.
I love you, Nicky. You are so amazing.
But in addition, I'm interrupting Patrick's flowers for just a moment, just to kind of, it's just encapsulating how much you inspire others, and you just like the word you're saying and your outlook on life. It's very, very calming. Like, just during this moment, we're having a conversation, which is back and forth, but then it's also feels very therapeutic to be like, yes, you know what I mean? It's very wise. So that's very cool too. But like Patrick said, we've talked all this time, and I'm like, we could keep going forever, because Patrick has all his questions, and then I would just be like, I got all these comedy questions, like you get on stage, like what was it like, when you're coming back from the pandemic and all these people with masks, when they try to laugh with masks, it's so weird. Like, there's like all these different ways and all these different things that we can talk about. But I'll just, in addition to Patrick, throw in my flowers there too, because it's just so fun talking and chatting with you.
Talk with you for hours, seriously.
You know what I mean? About all this stuff. But what
I love you guys, and I love hanging out with you. That means the world to me.
Totally.
Also, my version of this too is, Nicky, there's a thing called brief. We could try that too. I'm sure they'd be open to that.
Don't listen to her. I want to talk to long Nicky, not brief Nicky. I love this Nicky.
We don't want soundbite Nicky. We want extemporaneous thought spilling out Nicky.
Like, if I didn't have to edit, like, and do more, like, I got so many other projects I'm working on right now, because I'm like looking at the time too, and I know, and I'm not sure what year time that you have going on as well. But like, I could go on with you forever. So we just have to have you back, Nicky.
Yeah,
we have to.
I love that. Yeah. I'd love that. Let's make it a regular thing.
Yes. Don't play with me.
The
don't
pontification hour with the people.
Have you done the Show Pal show yet?
Well, no, because Show Pal show's Filipinx show.
Okay, I thought I was on the Show Pal show. Wasn't I on the show? Wasn't I on there?
No, you were on the regular interviews.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I've been talking.
But it's not regular. Let's not say regular. I said regular, but it's not regular. Outstanding interviews.
The outstanding. Okay. See, I don't even know. I'm talking to Patrick so often. I'm like, I thought this was a Show Pal show. I thought, because I got a lot of Filipino friends. I came from California, and the Pinoys are heavy out there. You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah.
And then
they make you feel like family. So it's not an appropriational thing.
That's what we about.
I agree. It's a cultural thing.
It really is. It really
so sometimes
is.
it's like, oh wait, no, I'm not actually Filipino. They just have invited me to a lot of
you part of the family,
and made sure that I left full every time.
Yes.
So,
oh gosh, with the best food.
Oh yeah, thank you. I have one last question. Question before we leave up out of here. And I don't know if you had one more, Glenn, but I just want to make sure I get this in there. What are 3 things? I'm like adding new stuff to my interviews now. What are 3 things that Nicky Endres cannot live without?
3 things I cannot live without. Lip balm, for sure. Water. Oh gosh, I'm such a pragmatist, aren't I? I love water. Okay. And perfume. That's my frivolous answer. I love
a particular scent.
Perfume. Yeah, it's discontinued. It's called Nuda by Nasumato. It is it's a parfum extrait, and it is like this. It's like a night blooming jasmine. It's a little indolic, but it's like the richest, most beautiful solid floor of jasmine that I've ever experienced, and they don't make it anymore. So I've just got my 30 milliliter bottle, like slowly, like in the refrigerator.
Oh wow!
I decant it into like a tiny little roller, and then mix it with like some Everclear to like. It's like a whole thing.
And there's no like comparable scent out there, or have you like tried looking to like buy out other people's stock?
Well, I did, but it was too expensive. And that was like 10 years ago. But actually Serge Lutens also makes a beautiful jasmine that I love called À la Nuit, but that was also discontinued.
Oh.
So I don't know what it is about, these classic soliflor jasmines, but I mean, jasmine is like one of the most popular perfumery notes in the world. It's just, I really enjoy my favorite fragrances are the soliflors that last, because it's such an interesting way to, whatever, this is a whole nother conversation. But the point being is I'm such a minimalist and pragmatist. I don't have a lot of luxury things. I try, and I'm an artist, so I need to like conserve my spending and really be on a tight budget.
Yeah.
But the one luxury item that I indulge in is perfume. I love it. It brings me so much joy. And it's like no, I won't fix my car or get new tires, but give me that $500 bottle of perfume from France. Like, is that a limited edition from that famous designer? Oh.
I love it.
It's completely ridiculous.
So I do have one final question, and it's kind of the basic. What do you got going on next? What are you looking forward to next? Where can we see you next? That question. What's happening next?
Well, I'm excited to do Asian Americanized live at the Crazy Woke Asians Festival in November, assuming, no more variants make it any harder to get back, knock on wood. But yeah, no, I'm just, I'm really looking forward to continuing my voiceover education. I'm getting some great auditions. It's just a new art form that I've
seen you on the PGM voiceover list with Ed Hong. I keep on seeing your name on.
Isn't he the best?
Same voice in Facebook group and stuff too. I like, oh look, Nicky just like that. You
get it. Well, gosh, he is amazing. We got to give him a shout out here. Well, he's done your show, hasn't he?
Not yet, but he's part of the Nerds of Color. He's part of our team.
Okay. Oh, duh. Okay.
So shout out to Ed Hong.
Small world. We love him. And then just frankly, and it's gonna seem maybe tasteless to say this, but whatever. My whole thing is about being real. I'm really hoping that the working on the Dropout and having some press being mentioned in Deadline is going to open up a few more doors, or just get me some new opportunities to test my mettle and show what I can do, and hopefully just work with some other great creative people. And the only reason I prefaced it that way was I don't know, I think it's a little, I'm of two minds, because on the one hand I'm like, oh, it's a little tasteless to talk about your marketing strategy like out loud with or like what your manager hopes comes next, but like I think it's important to be real with artists, especially people who are just coming up, or people who are thinking about whether or not they want to enter the entertainment industry. It's like there are so many non-artistic, practical, businessy things that become your life. And if you don't like that, find a different career, because the arty fun part, you gotta love it so much, and you still gotta not hate the other stuff. You gotta not hate it, because it's too much of your life. And especially it's like the more successful you get, the more issues that you have. It could be scheduling. I actually, for the first time in my career, had a scheduling issue where I had two opportunities invite me to be part of it, and I could not do both at the same time, because you can't be in two places at once. And that's like, and I was bummed about it, but I'm like, you know what? No, this is a problem of success. You know, how, let's be thankful that happened. Let's hope that happens a lot in the future. You know, or, you know, with Disney and Black Widow, I mean, like, successful people problems. I mean, it's, it's not that like anyone says, I want hardship, I want problems, but it's like, it's all in the framing. And so just, that's what I like to talk about, the realities and the less glamorous parts of being a professional artist and a professional actor in the entertainment industry. Just because things have changed so rapidly, just even the last 5-10 years. And, you know, influencers, it's a whole new market. It's not even new. It's just, it's now starting to become established enough that influencers have representation, and they're kind of encroaching in some of the areas of entertainment that actors have historically just done for acting.
And comedians.
Which is annoying. And more comedians are getting their SAG-AFTRA cards and like being encouraged to do acting, you know, and it's like, I think it's all kind of related. So but again, I think of my journey as, you know, artists in all of entertainment, not just one zone. But it's just, I guess that's why I went on this long tirade. It's just, I think it's important to talk about the harder, not hard, it is hard, the challenging, that can be beautiful, parts that are not glamorous in this line of work. So I freely share that, like getting press, especially for a good project where lots of other named famous people are a part of, is a good thing. You don't have to be the big name. You just have to be included. And that is still a win. Like, I don't care how gauche that sounds. Like, I'm glad that I'm in a project with big names.
Listen, I'm there with you. I was in a project. This sounds like now I'm throwing it back on me, but I'm gonna do it. You know why? Because it takes a little heat off you for throwing it on you. I'm gonna throw it on me. I was in a project. I'm an Oscar nominated actor. I was in background in this project called Traveling While Black, and then it got nominated for an Oscar. It lost to NASA in space, which gross. But no, I'm kidding. I love space, but it was nominated for an Oscar, and I'm like, well, I guess I could. I mean, I was in the background. You could see me in the film. It's like a virtual reality film, and you know, you pan back, and I'm there, and I'm acting, and I'm like, I guess I could claim this. Like, I feel like it's cheap to be like, I was in an Oscar nominated thing, but I was like, so yes, claim it. Let's right here. We're claiming the things that we do because we deserve it and we earned it and we worked hard for it.
And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for all the other people in it. You know, it's not about me. I'm just really happy to be included in this thing that's good for all of us.
Yeah.
And I gotta echo. I love when you say and speak like this, Nikki, because and I know where I'm at in this industry, and I know where you're at, and just I think for anybody, especially a lot of people I talk to, like who look up to me, and I feel like I'm still chugging. You know, that it doesn't matter where you're at. You know, we all are going through it, and it just it's not like this. It makes it tangible. And you've said a lot already through this all, and it's appreciated, and it's just that, and it's attainable. So I'll just leave it right there with that.
I love that's where you left it.
There we go. How can they reach out to you? I'm gonna have the info in the description below, but how can they reach out to you online?
Oh yeah, follow me on socials at Mix Nicky E. And yeah, it's like I got a link tree if you go to my webpage. I don't know, Google. They're all connected. Like I'm very much a whore about that. It's like if you like me one place, I'm gonna bother you to like me everywhere. But Instagram's really the place I hang out. So
I love it. Please follow Nikki. She's amazing. Glenn, how can they reach out to you so we can sign up off out of here as well?
Glenn Lawrence Laughs, Glenn Lawrence Comedy on Facebook and IG. Level Up Comedy and the start of the Blur Dad podcast. You can find that on Twitter as well. So, go ahead, give those a Google and you will find this beautiful face.
There you go. Please follow Glenn Lawrence and as well Nicky Endres, our amazing guest today. I am Kuya P. You can follow me at Strange Since 1977, as well as at Temple Far East. the legend Kuya P on TikTok, and as well as at the NRW and at New Release Wednesday, where nerds rule the world. And of course, the Nerds of Color and Show Pal Show. Great interview with Nicky Endres. We're gonna have her back because she has more stories to tell and more energy and light to bring, and I need it more in my life. So just know this, because I love her so much. Thank you, Nicky. Thank you, Kuya. Thank you, Glenn. Your boy Kuya P. We are out of here.
Peace.
Boom. Hi, I'm Nicky Endres, actor and comic. Come check me out on the NRW, talking with Kuya P and Glenn Lawrence. We're going to talk about comedy, martial arts, and my new show. It's not actually my show, that's clickbait, but about the show that I'm going to be on, which is just as fun, I promise.